Virtual meeting conference recording notice. The American Institutes for Research allows for recording of audio, visuals, participants, and other information sent, verbalized, or utilized during business-related meetings. By joining a meeting, you automatically consent to such recordings. Any participant who prefers to participate via audio only should disable their video camera so that only their audio will be captured. Video and/or audio recordings of any AIR session shall not be transmitted to an external third party without permission of AIR. Disclaimer: this presentation was produced and funded in whole with federal funds from the U.S. Department of Education under contract number GS00F347CA with the American Institute for Research, AIR. Carolyn Lempila serves as the contracting officer's representative. The content of this presentation does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of the U.S. Department of Education, nor does the mention of trade names, commercial products, or organizations apply endorsement by the U.S. government. Again, welcome to today's event. I'll hand it off to our moderator, Marcella.
Thanks so much, Long. And would you mind resharing your the PowerPoint?
Is it not? Oh, is it not showing? I'm sorry.
No worries. Great, thanks so much. So welcome everyone to today's webinar, Improving Alignment to Support Post-Secondary Transitions. Today's October 26th, 2022. We are so excited to have you here with us today. We'll be together starting now until about 4:30 p.m. Eastern. That's 1:30 for those of you on the West Coast. We can go to the next slide. I wanted to share with you a little bit about our Links Universal Technical Assistance webinars for those who are maybe not familiar with them. So today's session is part of that webinar series. This is a monthly series where we discuss the topics that matter most to the field of adult education. The purpose of the series is to support states in building their capacity in important areas. And since this is always a question that comes up, as Long said, our webinar is recorded and it will be available on the Links YouTube channel. Before we jump in, I wanted to share with you some resources that we have available through Links. Specifically, if you go to the Links resource collection, you'll find a great resource called Beyond Classroom Borders, Linking Learning and Work Through Career Relevant Instruction. And in our Links community, I encourage you to join discussions within the Career Pathways and Post-Secondary Transitions group and our Teaching and Learning group. You'll see on the screen we have the QR codes for each of those. On the left is the QR code to access the resource collection, and on the right is the link to join a community. With that, I really briefly want to introduce our two fantastic presenters. So with us today, we have Kathleen Porter, who serves as the Executive Director of Career Technical Adult and Alternative Education in the Poway Unified School District. In this role, Kathleen serves as the chairperson of her region's Adult Education Consortium, which is one of 71 consortia in the state of California. She is also the past state president of the California Council of Adult Education. A former teacher, resource teacher, and career education specialist, Kathleen was also the manager of the East County Career Center, part of San Diego's One-Stop Career Center network, which is now known as America's Job Center of California. We also have with us today Kathy Olson-Tracy, who is Senior Director for Adult Education and Literacy and State Director for Title II programs at the Illinois Community College Board. Her 25 years in adult education have included roles ranging from intake staff to program director to her current role as state director. She also serves the Links community as moderator for the program management group, yet another one of our great groups in our Links community that we encourage you to check out. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen.
Thank you, Marcella, and hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you this afternoon to talk a little bit more about how we can improve alignment between and among systems in order to better support students' transitions to post-secondary education and the workforce. So in terms of the overview of this session, I have a little under an hour to spend with you to think about how we might make some strides in this area to support post-secondary transitions. So we have 4 objectives that we've identified for today. First of all, we want to develop some common understandings about the importance of supporting successful post-secondary education and workforce transitions. We want to reinforce existing knowledge that we have about persistence and learner persistence and how those play a role in students' needs for support in transitioning. We want to examine 6 different promising practices that we know might support our students in making these transitions. And then finally, we want to identify at least one next best step for each of us going forward. So as we explore alignment among systems to support post-secondary alignment, this is what you can expect for our agenda. First, we'll identify some of the background information that influences and supports the need for post-secondary transitions. And I'm going to call this setting the stage. Next, we'll explore these 6 promising practices that we know support our adult education students in successfully transitioning to post-secondary education and the workforce. While we do that, we'll also spend time thinking about different roles in our adult education system and how each role plays a part in supporting transitions. And then finally, before I turn things over to Kathy, each of us will have a chance to reflect on what might be our next best steps to carry this work forward. So as we think about setting the stage, I would really want to frame things as what is our backdrop? So I'd like to ask you now if you can think about some of the different background information or what are some initiatives that have helped us set the stage for this post-secondary transition work. So what do you see right now that's driving or influencing the need for post-secondary transitions? You can just put those comments in the chat, if you will. So the question is, what kinds of things do you see as influencing or driving the need for post-secondary transitions right now? Don't be shy. Thank you, Betsy. Workforce shifts, absolutely. New and emerging occupations, the need for reskilling and higher pay. Shannon, thank you. Workforce development. Going to give a couple more seconds if anybody else is typing, and then we'll move forward. Credential requirements, thank you. Okay, I'm going to push us forward here. So as we continue setting the stage, the first thing we want to consider is why. Why is there a need for us to better support these post-secondary transitions? And so we'll start way back in the early 2000s. We know that we saw a shift in educational thinking to move beyond college or career readiness toward a more inclusive notion of college and career readiness. In large part, this was due to changing work world requirements. Future jobs we knew are going to require and do require greater and greater levels of post-secondary education and training. The concept moved us from historically sorting and selecting students, saying you're somebody who's going to go to college, you're somebody who's going to go straight to career, to ensuring that each and every one of our students met the standards for post-secondary education and work. At this time, we began to hear about college and career readiness skills being virtually the same skill set. This shift also shifted how we perceive the end game and how we measure success for our programs. We moved beyond credential attainment. We started thinking about, we're looking for what do you need to be placed and be successful at the next level. So in other words, were students successful when they left our programs after they attained a credential to move on to post-secondary education or careers? The shift also affected defining successful post-secondary transitions. Transitioning to a college environment alone wasn't enough. We wanted to be sure that when a student transitioned to college, that they were prepared for credit-bearing coursework and were not going to need remediation. In 2013, the National College and Career Readiness Standards for Adult Education were published. According to CCRS, the introduction, we know that integrating these CCR standards into adult education programs is intended to provide all adult students with the opportunity to be prepared for post-secondary training without needing remediation. And specifically, we know WIOA requires state-adopted, challenging academic content standards designed to prepare our students for success in post-secondary educational endeavors and careers. So on this slide, we have two graphics. One is the logo for the Alliance for Quality Career Pathways, a project of CLASS. And the second is a graphic depicting OCTAE's Stackable Credentials Expansion and Dissemination Initiative. So as we continue in our journey of setting the stage, we want to consider the importance of career pathways in this work. A career pathway is a workforce development strategy used to support workers' transitions from education into and through the workforce. It's a series of structured and connected educational programs and supportive services that enable students, often while they are working, to advance over time to better jobs and higher levels of education and training. It's a series of connected educational and training strategies and support services that enable individuals to secure industry-relevant certification and obtain employment within an occupation, and to advance to higher levels of future education and employment in that area. We know that the career pathways are called out in WIOA as a strategy to support students in successfully transitioning to post-secondary education in the workforce. The U.S. Departments of Education, Health and Human Services, and Labor have all made a joint commitment to provide the use of career pathways as a promising strategy to help adults acquire marketable skills and industry-recognized credentials. And this is all through this better alignment of education, training, and support agencies with employers in the workforce. So in 2014, the Alliance for Quality Career Pathways published a document called Shared Vision, Strong Systems. And this document created a framework to define quality career pathways. The framework identified both essential features and essential functions of career pathways. Another recent and useful resource in this area is the 2021 Introduction to Stackable Credentials, which builds upon the 2018 Stackable Credentials Toolkit. Both of these publications from the Center for Occupational Research and Development Support, OCTAE's Stackable Credentials Expansion and Dissemination Initiative. There are three essential features of quality career pathways, and those are these three: well-connected and transparent education, training, and support services, and credentials. The second is multiple entry points. And the third is multiple exit points. So when we're talking about these things, we want them to be seamless. We want them to be well connected. We want students to have the opportunity to start at different places, to stop out and reconnect to their work without losing progress. We don't want people to have to go back to starting at go. We want them to have easy entrance points, easy stop out points, and these stackable credentials are one way that we can achieve that. The 4 essential functions of career pathways are: number 1, participant-focused education and training; 2, consistent and non-duplicative assessments; 3, supportive services and career navigation assistance; and 4, employment services and work experiences. I'm going to read you a quote from the framework that explains what a functional career pathway system should be. A career pathway system is the cohesive combination of partnerships, resources, funding, policies, data, and shared performance measures that support the development, quality, scaling, and dynamic sustainability of career pathways and programs for youth and adults. A career pathway system is an overarching framework and is not couched within any one public, workforce, or other system. The value of a career pathway system is that it connects and aligns all other related public systems to one another and to private and nonprofit partners. So our task is really to help create this system of alignment between and among these agencies and partners. So I'm going to pause for a moment here before we move on to exploring some specific promising practices, just to ask, do you have any questions or comments about anything we've talked about in terms of the backdrop and setting the stage for this post-secondary work? Any questions?
Kathleen, we did have a question about what those 3 essential components were, but I put them in the chat and I just wanted to restate them if that's okay with you.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah, the 3 essential features of quality career pathways are well-connected and transparent education, training, support services, and credentials, multiple entry points, and multiple exit points.
Thank you, Marcella. Thank you for asking the question, Betsy. Okay, so I'm going to push us forward into exploring some of the promising practices. So in this next section, we're going to explore 6 different promising practices. These are research-based practices that are proven to positively affect successful transitions to post-secondary education and to careers. I know my audience today is largely state leaders, and so as state leaders, rather than being the person in the classroom directly delivering instruction, your role will be to identify promising practices when and where they occur and to spotlight those. Your role may also be to bring people together to learn about new practices and to share data. And you may be in a position where you can bring leaders from post-secondary and labor to create alignment across systems, including education, health and human services, and business and industry. So the first practice we're going to take a look at today is strengthening relationships between post-secondary education institutions and adult education programs. So depending upon your role, this might be something that you can do at a state, a regional, or a local level. So one of the things that we have done in California is we have organized into the 71 adult education consortia. And in those consortia, we have K-12 adult schools participating, as well as community college partners. And so those community college partners become the boundaries. So we have 71 different community college districts in California. And each of the adult schools that are within that boundary start to work together. And so these discussions we're modeling at a regional level, but it also goes up to the state level because the adult education program, the California Adult Education Program, is a partnership between the Community College Chancellor's Office and our K-12 California Department of Education. So that's just one example of how we might align programs. And again, you can scale that up or down depending on your role. If you're a teacher in a classroom, sometimes it's just knowing your college counterparts and where are your students going. If you are at a regional level, how are you aligning work with other people in your region? And then of course at the state level. Are there other examples that you can think of that might relate to this practice, strengthening relationships between post-secondary education institutions and adult education programs? Any other examples come to mind? I'm going to push us forward because I know we're going to hear a little bit about this from Kathy. So our promising practice number 2 is curriculum alignment. And so in curriculum alignment, we really want to take a look at what we're doing and how are we aligning the entry points with exit points for programs. So in my consortium, we have 5 adult education providers and 1 community college district. And several years ago, it was actually 7 years ago, we began a collaborative curriculum alignment project. We started small. We asked programs to opt in, and if they wanted to engage in this effort, we didn't mandate it. But we actually had our adult school partners get together. This was over the course of several meetings. Typically, it was 3 meetings in a subject area. And they looked at these high-level course overviews. And so what we were looking for, again, is taking the exit point from one course to align with the entry point to another. And you can imagine that we found some gaps. And so we had the choice when we found gaps to either create a new course that bridged that gap or to rewrite the existing courses. So we were able to provide those to get students ready. We also have looked at placement scores. And so in California, we've now gone away from placement tests. But in some cases, just knowing where somebody needs to be in terms of a placement score so that you're shooting for the goal to have them easily transition into that next level. So the final thing about this is we looked at, in some cases, we had a course that was determined to be equivalent to a college level course. So of course we want to do that so students aren't having to repeat that course. We want students to be able to start at the very next level in the sequence rather than when they transition to college, repeat something that they've already learned. And so when we talk about these articulation agreements or we talk about these alignment efforts, that's really what we're looking for. How are we ensuring that there's this seamless pathway for students? And how are we aligning those entry and exit points? And if something's duplicated at one school to another, that students have the chance to leap over that course requirement. Any other examples that you want to share about curriculum alignment? If it's easier and you don't want to type in the chat, you're welcome to unmute and just chime in. Is anybody doing anything interesting with curriculum alignment? You know, this is the first one of these I've done, so I'm not really sure how interactive they usually are.
So, Kathleen, this is Kathy.
Yes.
And I had the opportunity to attend NTI, National Training Institute, last week. And while Illinois hasn't done this, I certainly make note of it to explore when we get back. What I see some programs contemplating, some states, is looking at courses and seeing if they can articulate as college credit courses through the content in there. And I found that to be really intriguing. I think that a lot of what we teach, when we base it on curriculum, speaks to that high quality, high rigor. So I wonder, like, if I ever sat down and said, what is an English 101 class at a community college? What is it in our English classes that we, literacy, literature, language courses that we teach? Is there enough alignment that we could look towards articulation and some kind of dual enrollment? So while we're not there yet, and I've just got some notes sketched from the last week's meeting, I think there's a lot of promising conversations happening with articulation and alignment between courses.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a time saver for students. Thank you for sharing that, Kathy. That's great. And Betsy, I see that you're offering IET where ABE and CTE curriculum is aligned. So that's another perfect example. So these are really acceleration strategies for our students to help them move swiftly, seamlessly with the skills they need to succeed onto that next level. Thank you. So I'm going to move on to promising practice number 3, and this is really getting into the data sharing agreements. And so I'm sure most of us are familiar with John Hattie's work on teacher collective efficacy. So we know that collective efficacy is the most powerful influencer of student achievement. It's more powerful, not by small amounts, but by really significant amounts, 2 or 3 times more powerful than any other influencer on student achievement, either positive or negative. It's more powerful than prior achievement, more powerful than socioeconomic status, more powerful than home environment, and on and on and on. So how do we build teacher collective efficacy? And what Hattie's research tells us is that it's by spotlighting what's working. Showing evidence of impact is the #1 way to build momentum among teachers to show them that it's working. And so when teachers can see evidence of impact, they know that their efforts are making a difference. That is how we build teacher collective efficacy. So how do we do that? We need data to do that. And we need data, not only our own data that shows maybe credential attainment or shows that students completed a class and moved on to the next level, but it's really that next level data. We want to know how our students do when they leave us. So it goes back to that notion of placement and success at the next level. So there are a number of different tools that we can use to leverage this data, start conversations in our agencies around building this culture of collective efficacy. So in some cases, it would be holding professional learning communities. In our consortium, we've started to do cross-agency PLCs where we're looking with our other colleagues from other adult schools and our community college to see how our students are doing. We're using data sharing agreements where we do a match to show us how our students do when we leave us. Did they need remediation? Is there anything that we could be doing differently or better? And then sharing outcome data across agencies, I think, are just some of the tools that we can get, move this work forward. So I'm going to ask here again, does anybody have an example that you'd like to share? And again, if you want to unmute and just speak out, you're welcome to do that, or you can type in the chat. Oh, thank you, Betsy. You track employment, earnings, credential attainment, successful transition to post-secondary, and more. This information is shared in aggregate during staff meetings and PD discussions. Perfect. That's awesome. Thank you, Betsy. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to keep moving us forward then. We'll go on to promising practice number 4. Promising practice number 4 really has to do with targeted student support. So you probably are aware that there are a lot of new positions that are coming forward. So we're hearing more about career navigators. We've had counselors for a while in our programs, but now you're starting to hear about positions that are called transition specialists or case managers in adult education program, advisors. And so one of the things that we noticed in our consortium was that we thought what would make a difference for us were 2 positions. And so each of our adult schools and our community college has 2 positions. One is a transitions advisor. And so that person is really focusing on post-secondary transitions for our students. And the other is we each have a career education specialist, and that person is focusing on workforce transitions. Each of those folks get together with their students and get together with one another to look at how are we moving the needle here? What is it that we need to do? And so that has been kind of a game changer in our little cluster. And I wonder if you have other ideas about what you might be doing with targeted student support. So that's just one example.
Kathleen, while people are thinking about that and typing their answer to that one in the chat, I wanted to circle back to what Maureen shared, that in Delaware, they are working with the Delaware Department of Labor to share outcomes with WIOA subpopulations to determine if either agency has a best practice they can share, which sounds really exciting. And I know several states that I work with through the NRS project are doing similar things or thinking about similar things.
That's great. Thank you so much, Marcella. And thank you for posting that for us, Maureen. And also, Betsy, I see you had a chat. You had something else to talk about related to promising practice number 3, where your teachers are engaging in the data collection via a very simple class report, which is great. Thank you. Oh, and Betsy, thank you now for posting about practice number 4. So Delaware has a robust student alumni association, which provides a student liaison at all or nearly all adult education sites. These awesome team members provide direct student support with the perspective of having been there, done that. That's wonderful. Yes, ambassador programs. Wonderful. Thank you. And you're getting some kudos from Maureen there too. Thank you so much. So let's move forward. We'll talk a little bit about promising practice number 5. So promising practice number 5 is making sure that specific college readiness skills are integrated into our adult education programs. So I'm wondering if you might want to just type in the chat anything that you think might be a specific college readiness skill. What do we mean by a specific college readiness skill? Career exploration, study skills, learning through online courses, excellent. Digital literacy, thank you. Resource navigation, thank you. Note-taking, test-taking, organization, English language skills in preparation for academics. Yeah, so all of these kinds of things. So some specific ones that we've noted are just ensuring that every one of our courses has a syllabus. So that's a simple thing to do. Every college course has a syllabus. Having students know what's coming up in their courses, just having a syllabus, having homework expectations in your course, planning for group projects or presentations in your class. Research and writing are two things that really come up in these college readiness skills. I see, Sandra says, our students must take the college success class to make sure they know what to expect during the journey. Thank you. Oh, and Adria, thank you. Syllabus literacy is such a specific skill for college readiness. Yes. So how do we provide these opportunities for students in our adult education programs to model these things, give them practice with these things so that they are able to succeed when they get to post-secondary? Okay, I'm going to move us to promising practice number 6 right now. So this is learner goal setting. And I know we've all focused a lot on learner goal setting. We know from learner persistence research that learners are more likely to persist when they have a goal in mind. Students persist when they have a picture of themselves in the future that connects back to the educational experience. And although goals can be categorized, it's really important to have a goal that's very personalized for each student. And so when we think about a goal setting, you know, sometimes we'll have a drop-down menu of what are your goals, but we really want to take students a step further. So we heard a program, one of our colleagues was just talking about how the instructors in the program are using questioning strategies to really help personalize goals for students. So if you have an English as a second language class, for example, the instructor might say, well, why are you here? And the student might answer, I'm here to learn English. But how do we get to deeper answers than that? So, well, why do you want to learn English? So what is it that you're hoping to gain? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? So that we really create these concrete goals for students. And it's something that they share not only with their instructor, but they also share with their classmates. The other thing that we've talked about a lot is giving students opportunities to reevaluate goals over time. And so whether it's a periodic review of goals, maybe once a quarter, maybe every 6 weeks, maybe once a semester, just some point to periodically review those goals. And the reason for that is, you know, twofold. Number one, as students have more experience with success and more exposure to other careers, they may actually start to develop a sense of themselves in the future that originally they didn't envision. And so this is a way for us to keep that goal setting somewhat fluid and keeping pace with students. And so I guess our challenge here really is how do we create the systems where learners gain exposure to and have the opportunity to explore careers throughout their educational experience? And how do we create time in our system for our learners to periodically reflect on their goals? All right, so I'm going to take a look here. So I see Fiorma Lissa Johnson says some of our programs create a teacher introduction videos welcoming students prior to their first class. That's great. Thank you. And please consider your syllabus ideas in the links community of practice. Yes. Okay. Are there other practices that you're doing around learner goal setting that you'd like to share with this group now? Okay, well, I'm going to push us forward then. So as we start to think about considering roles, we know that it takes a village. This is the kind of work that's everyone's business, from our boots on the ground teachers and support staff members to program directors to state leaders and staff and leaders of other workforce development or post-secondary agencies. Each and every one of us has a role that we can play. So we kind of need to look at alignment at all levels, macro to micro. So are we thinking about system to system kinds of alignment, and what opportunities do we have for that? Are we thinking institution to institution alignment, and what opportunities do we have for that? Are we thinking about teacher to teacher alignment, and what opportunities do we have for that? And how do we create these opportunities for people to really reflect and engage in that work? So at this point, I'm going to pause and give you a few minutes to think about your readiness to begin this work and what your leverage points might be. So when I say a leverage point, I mean thinking about other structures or initiatives that you have in place that you might be able to use to propel this work forward and gain traction. So is there something that you can think about that you're already doing, or a meeting that you already have where you could engage in some discussions about this alignment work, the systems alignment work? And a leverage point is really a place in a system structure where a solution element can be applied. So it's a low leverage point if a small amount of change forces causes a small amount of change. And it's a high leverage point if a small amount of force causes a large amount of change. And so we're really looking for these leverage points where you are going to be able to get the most traction and momentum for work that you do. So what are you already doing that could be a leverage point for this? And if you'd like to think about a next best step, you can put that in the chat. Okay, so I see we have a couple of ideas here. These might have been from some of our other slides. So Maureen says one of our state goals is for each student to develop a career plan as part of their ABE program. It's revisited as students stay in class. Yeah, that's perfect, Maureen. And I think just having that opportunity to not do one and done, but it's a living document that goes forward. And Adria, thank you. Self-inventory tools can be a great productive practice in learner goal setting. Would love to hear any suggestions people might have for these tools. And then Betsy, you hold an activity where students rotate through presentations on possible post-secondary options. That's great. Employment, military, career training, apprenticeship, or college. The presentations are made by experts in each of these areas. We pre and post survey participants to see if change in their post-secondary goal occurs as a result. That's great. Follow-on activities are provided in each of these areas to move students closer to their post-secondary goal achievement. Yeah, that sounds like a great practice, Betsy. Thank you. So what about next best steps? Oh, Christina, thank you for posting. We are developing an adult ed ELL data dashboard in collaboration with academic deans. That's terrific. One function would be to elevate transition to post-secondary and related programs. Yeah, and this idea of having the data be transparent so people can actually see the evidence of impact is just so important. So love that, Christina. Thank you for sharing. Anything else? What about a next best step? Anybody brave enough to say one thing that they're going to do to move this work forward? Just one thing. Doesn't have to be the whole action plan. Okay, well, I'm not hearing any, but I think at this point, what I'm going to do is thank you for your time and your attention today. I've really appreciated the opportunity to get to spend a little chunk of time this afternoon with you. I'm going to turn things over to Kathy, and she's going to share some of the work that they're doing in Illinois. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Kathleen. I appreciate everything you've said. And so much of what I'm going to share is going to be building on everything you've said. It's amazing how all of these pieces align because they're all built on promising practices. So I want to share with you how Illinois has approached standards in action, where we're preparing students for post-secondary student success. And one of the reasons I really want to focus on standards in action is that idea of academic preparedness as a requirement for success in higher education. So in Illinois' approach, we have a state-supported curriculum. So again, we're building on everything that Kathleen Porter has said. You know, we have adult basic education and adult secondary education standards. Now, we do the same thing for our English as a second language learner population, but for today's conversation, I'm using the ABE-ASE model, understanding that the ASE curriculum is also standards-based to prepare our English language learners for higher education. Another thing we're going to talk about today is our iPathways project. As I mentioned earlier in the chat feature, we very firmly believe that preparedness also must include an understanding of how to navigate online instruction, because so much of that is built into our post-secondary education. We'll look at how all of this builds on professional development and how we've integrated teaching skills that matter into our professional development and our standards in action process. And we're also going to kind of touch point on universal design, ensuring that there is an equity lens in how we approach our standards, our instruction. These ideas combined are going to really help our teachers have the tools readily available so that they can become prepared for that classroom instruction, and our students learn what they need to learn to be successful in the job market, in post-secondary education, and in any kind of work-based training. Oops, too fast. So let's talk about our curriculum project. And again, there is the same pathway for ELL, but for today's conversation, we're going to look at ABE-ASE. And the reason I think standards are a really good place for us to start is to understand why we have these standards in action projects. And the role of these standards are for the students because we can define what that student needs to know to be able to move forward. All those times when the students are asking the question in the classroom, why do I need to know this? Is this on the test? Why is this something I'm studying? And we know that when we can answer those questions for our students, that we really increase our retention because we're connecting what they're doing in the classroom to their overarching goals. And standards allow us to do that. And the role of standards for teachers, it's grounded in curriculum design. It informs the design and selection of materials, instructional strategies, and ongoing assessment. It helps frame that instructional process. And we're supporting our teachers as they're building lessons. So many of our teachers are part-time. You know, we have a part-time field. So the more tools that we can provide to the teachers, the easier they are going to have when they're trying to build their instructional lessons and their classrooms. Now, one of the things that we're going to look at is our iPathways project. I'm not going to take you through that, but I do want to acknowledge that in the adult education ASE space, we have a state-supported curriculum. This iPathways is aligned with the standards. But why I wanted to include this in the conversation about post-secondary transition is the absolute importance of ensuring there is some digital literacy included in your instruction. More important than that, it's all of those tools on how to be an independent learner, how to communicate with your teacher when they're not in the same room, at the same space. You're going to use email, you're going to use discussion boards, you're going to use prompts on conversations to communicate. And we know that so much of higher education is built on an integration of some form of distance learning, whether you're going to capture your notes from an online class, whether you're going to engage in a discussion board, whether it's a hybrid and you're in class sometimes and you're working independently. We know that this is a part of that success. So we can't overlook what we're doing without including those web-based digital literacy inclusive spaces. So I'm going to pause for just a minute, and I'd like to invite you to either unmute yourself or type in the chat, and let's talk about the standards in action and the integration of web-based learning. Is that something that you feel aligns with how you're providing transition support for individuals? And as you're thinking about your response, I'd also like to kind of call out or call forward the idea that we all went to remote learning when the global pandemic hit. And as we move back into a space where we're having more and more in face-to-face courses, I see some of my programs kind of stepping back away from the idea of online learning. And our support and process in the state is to encourage programs to keep the good lessons learned from this sudden transition to remote learning. I see that all of the teachers are accessible via technology through email, a communication app, or work within our LMS. And it is so important to give the students the ability and the experience with communicating with a teacher before they end up in a higher education program and they've never experienced requesting remediation, support, extensions, or other necessary issues through email with a teacher, setting up appointments and things like that. Those soft skills are not only necessary in the workplace, they're vital in higher education as well. Okay, so building on that, how does this actually work? And what you're seeing here is kind of a graphic of our process in the state of Illinois to bring on new teachers, kind of building on what we talked about with teacher efficacy leading into students' successful completion and transition. So we looked at it through standards in action. And we built this training where you have a standards proficient instructor. And then once you have a standards proficient instructor, they can continue this professional development pathway and they can become a specialist. And then they can continue even further down that pathway if they chose to and become a master teacher. We have these pathways, as this graphic will show, for ABE-ASE in language arts and math. We also have that pathway for equity and transitions. And again, we do have the same pathways and high rigor for our ESL learners. Okay, moving on. Let's look at what those look like. What does it mean in Illinois to be a standards proficient instructor? So in our professional development network, we have some really rigorous training, and these are all delivered remotely, by the way, so we don't have any in face-to-face classrooms. But the teachers have to meet the following criteria. They take a standards foundation course in our system that's called iLearn. It's an independent learning course that they can take and understand what standards are and understand what they are used for and how to use them, and experience, explore, and understand the specific standards for ABE and ASE. We require career and college readiness innovations. Through this, we expect our teachers at the end of this instruction to be able to create a standards-aligned lesson, and they look at lesson studies. We also focus on assignments and student work. So how are you looking at that? What are you doing in this process to look at the assignments and the student work and go back to those standards and make sure that that student has developed that knowledge and awareness and capability to demonstrate they have learned that information? And we require every program in the state to have at least standards proficient instructors at a minimum. We're going to move on to the content specialist. So we're building on this idea of a standards proficient teacher, but we're talking about you can only be a specialist if you've been teaching for at least 1 year. You absolutely need to understand ABE and ASE assessment practices. You need to understand what those scores tell us, so that the teacher can take that student's scores and look at them and say, okay, this is what these scores mean. Here are their successes, their strengths, and potentially their deficiencies in where areas they need to strengthen up. And until a teacher can really kind of understand that for each student, that's really going to be that whole individualized lesson planning that works with everybody. In this one, we build on those college and career readiness innovations. Teachers are required to learn how to analyze resources. So we want them to be able to go out and find resources that will support learning, but they have to be able to analyze them of whether they do meet the standards that they're trying to teach to, whether they're relevant for the student. Sometimes resources are good, but they don't quite hit that benchmark of what we need them to be identified and aligned with a specific standard. So for our content specialist, we're also helping them learn how to use those tools and revise those resources to make sure that that tool achieves its intended purpose. They really develop a subject matter competency. Absolutely. Thank you in the chat. Promising practice number 2, curriculum alignment. Absolutely. So much of what we're doing here is building on the wonderful information Kathleen shared. And we also want that teacher to have a degree or recognized teacher certification in the relevant content area or demonstrated competence in teaching that. So there's a requirement for the administrators to engage in this conversation. This is not only for the teachers. I mean, think about this. The program administrator is to be the instructional leader at every institution. So we have a responsibility with our administrators to engage in this conversation and this training with a specialist so that we know that that person has developed and demonstrated competency in relevant subject matters. And then we're going to talk about the master teacher. So to be a master teacher, you need 3 years of adult education experience in that content area. And here is where we're bringing in that data documented increased student outcomes. We're looking at the data, because if you're teaching standards aligned curriculum and you understand assessment and how to read those assessment tools and understand how to teach to fill in those gaps that a student may have and how to find those resources and then also adjust those resources to fit your need, at this point, we really should be seeing a lot of student outcomes. So we're looking at the data to make sure that's happening. And then we look at standards-based lesson planning. Are they able to develop a lesson plan built on the Illinois content standards? They have to be able to articulate teaching practices and teaching methodologies. And in here, we ask them to provide instructional leadership activities, mentoring teachers that are coming in as those standards proficient, mentoring those content specialists. So a lot of this is kind of a networked and shared learning. I see a comment in here addressing the teacher shortage. We are struggling with this as well. At the end of this conversation, I could maybe spend about 5 minutes to kind of talk through some of these ideas and how we're working through that in Illinois. I will tell you a high level, one idea that we're kind of thinking through is having a lead teacher who is a master teacher who is going to also lead an online course and have a variety of aides assisting in that instruction. So the master teacher will be teaching the hybrid component, the distance learning component, with online tutors available for in classes. And that's kind of a model we're trying to flesh out. We haven't done it yet, so I don't want to give you kind of a false idea of how easy that would be. But because we're feeling the same pain points you are, we're looking at kind of a master teacher who will then supervise some on-site tutors. And then the teacher has the asynchronous learning. And then the student has that hybrid where they can come into class and learn independently with tutors on site. So that's at least one idea that we're trying to flesh out in a little bit more detail. Okay. I know that you guys are hearing a lot about the teaching skills that matter. And on this slide, you'll see the graphic for teaching skills that matter. But the reason I wanted to bring this forward is because it's so focused and connected to that standards-based instruction. And when we're talking about getting that student ready for post-secondary education, what we're also talking about is ensuring that student is academically prepared to take credit-bearing courses. And how we're getting them there is not only our standards, but Illinois participated in the first Teaching Skills That Matter cohort. Within that space, our professional development center that is in charge of standards also led the Teaching Skills That Matter initiative. So the lessons that we learned were then integrated into our professional development structure. So as the teachers are going through these various stages of the content specialist, the standards proficient, the master teacher, the process, the way they're learning through this, they're building into that the teaching skills that matter process. So we can start really having deep conversations with the resources that are available. And again, goes back to how to find resources, how to explore them, how to connect them to the standards they're being taught for. So as you're looking at building a standards-based curriculum, keep in mind a lot of this is already laid out with step-by-step guidance in some of the resources that are available to you for both the standards in action process and teaching skills that matter. So I'm going to pause for just a minute, and I'd like to think about what you're hearing. What are your takeaways so far, built on Kathleen's ideas and what I'm sharing? Can you kind of give us an idea of one thing that you're thinking through or going to be able to take away? And I invite you to either come off mute or type in the chat feature. Okay, guys, I'm hoping somebody has at least one takeaway that they've learned today that they're going to be able to apply into their program or their state. I'll bring my teacher voice in and I'll start calling on participants. That's great. Fior Melissa from New York is talking about exploring integrating technology into our classrooms. I love that, and she shared a link, so please grab that, everybody. Grab the link that she shared. What I like about this is, again, that we cannot overlook the necessity for integrating technology in a meaningful way so that the student can be prepared for higher education. So there's a lot of good learning coming out. Interested in the idea of supporting student-to-student navigating mentoring. I love that. Peer-to-peer learning is always good. The teacher credentialing process, just how to use that in some of our own teacher preparedness and PD planning. I'm going to take us down the next slide, but I do want to let you know that we released this Standards in Action and have been building on this process for several years. And a few years ago, AIR did some research with Illinois. And what was really interesting, what we were so excited about, is that we actually were able, well, they, because they're the experts in the research, were able to connect student outcomes to our standards in action processes and teacher credentialing. They were able to see the connection and the correlation between those two. So they were able to present that at COABE right before the world shut down. But we were able to come out and present that with the staff at AIR, because what we talked about with teacher efficacy being one of the strengths for students to develop the skill sets necessary to transition to post-secondary education. I think that that is such a critical piece to think about. And I will also land on the use and incorporation on the links resources. I cannot support that enough. That statement. The resources are available to you, and after you have a chance to complete this webinar, I do personally invite you to log into links and to look around at our resources, to check out the state resources, and to think about joining a community of practice if you're not already a member of a community in practice, because that's where I learned so much about what we bring forward and bring back to our state is through what you guys are doing in other states. That idea of that student-to-student navigation mentoring, this for me is peer-to-peer mentoring with my colleagues across the country. Okay, we move on. Now, one of the things we talk about a lot in the state of Illinois, and we see it across our country, is the critical importance of equity in our instruction. But I also want to acknowledge this idea of initiative fatigue in my state, right? You know, we're doing so much work. We're doing IETs, we have IELCE programming, we have standards in action, we have now a focus on equity, all of the work that we're doing. And I thought this idea of universal design is so critically important for that equity lens that we're working through. But how do we build this into our program without adding another initiative? So I'm going to go back to a video for you guys to see. I want you to see how we set up universal design to set the table for learning. But what I'd like you to also know about this, these videos, we've built many videos and many training resources on universal design. They're built into our equity pathway, but they're also built into our teaching credentialing pathway, so that we start thinking about universal design for learning. And as you're building that lesson plan, what does that mean? And as you're evaluating resources, what does universal design look like? And that's how we integrate universal design for learning into our standards in action. So I'm going to invite you to take I think it's 2 minutes, and watch one of the videos to see how Illinois has approached some of the training videos.
Have you ever attended a dinner party where the host prepared tasty and inviting food, attractively displayed it on a large table, pulled up a comfortable chair and invited you to feast, but not provide any silverware to use to eat the meal? By the way, the meal consists of pasta with a very messy sauce. Of course not. Why? Because your host knows.
This may seem bizarre, but do you actually know what happens when the prostate?
What happened? I am so sorry. That was the video I gave you. It looks like there might be an error in the video. So what I will do, if you can give me back the slides, we'll move forward. and then I will ensure that these links are correct and put them in the community of practices so that you can view them at your convenience. I apologize, I'm not quite sure what happened to that video.
I'm sure it was just a commercial, Kathy. No
That's
worries. It happens with YouTube.
Okay, all right. But the point that I wanted you to walk away with today was that you can build universal design as an equity approach as a part of your instruction, connect it to your standards so that teachers know how to bring this universal design philosophy to their classroom. And then you are building an equitable classroom that is ready to prepare students for that post-secondary transition. Okay. That was my last slide, but again, I really would like to be available to answer any questions you have about the standards in action approach, about that academic preparedness to get that student ready, and how that should include both digital literacy, as Fior Melissa had pointed out in her link. Encourage you to grab that. And I would also encourage you to kind of check out these supports that we have here in our links as we've captured them through the chat feature. And then if you have any questions for me about the standards in action process, I'm going to put my email in the chat feature. Okay, and I'll be more than happy to share what we've done and share any supports that you might want to look at your program and or at your state. And at that point, thank you. And I will turn this over to our AIR team.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And I shared the link to the video. Hopefully others will have greater success. And we didn't have that same challenge when we previewed the video. So maybe it won't always show interesting commercials. So we wanted to provide now an opportunity for those of you who have any questions for Kathy or Kathleen to put those into the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, we're more than happy to call on you and unmute you so that you can ask them directly. I know sometimes it can be challenging to type out everything that you have on your mind.
So I do have a question for the group as you're thinking about posing questions for us. But I'd like to come back to you and see how many of you have established standards for your state or for your program. Okay. I think those ESL standards are going to become very critical to understand the importance of it as we prepare for new assessments. Okay. You know what I think is really critical? I see Delaware has Common Core for Adult Education, ABE, ASE, and ESL. And I think the key here might be building on those standards to really teach teachers how to connect with those standards. Again, at least in my state, we have the majority of teachers are part-time, which means that lesson prep time isn't really available in many instances. So giving them the tools to have it readily available can be very helpful. Thank you.
And a couple of other states have also, or people from other states have also mentioned that they have the ABE, ASE standards and standards for English language proficiency.
And many of you have indicated that you use links for resources. There is the information on standards on the first page. I encourage you to check those out as well. Oh, I like the curriculum framework that shows the correlation of standards with the assessments we use. That's beautiful.
Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I wanted to share with all of you two wonderful projects that are OCTAE funded that can help you with some of this work. Oh, sorry, actually, before I do that, I did want to check in with all of you. My apologies. First, to do a poll to see if you are interested in continued support on this topic with aligning with post-secondary, or to support post-secondary transitions. I know that it sounds like many of you are working on this, and so we're hopeful that you might be interested in receiving some more support. And if not, that's okay too. And since I'm already jumping ahead of myself, the reason that we're asking is that we do have technical assistance that we can provide you on this topic so that we can support you in building your capacity around doing just this aligning post-secondary, or alignment for post-secondary transitions. So again, it's just to see who would like us to follow up with them to get some more information. Okay, great. Well, I'm pleased to see that some of you are, and we'll follow up with you. And those who aren't quite ready, that's okay too. We'll have lots of opportunities to continue talking about this. If we can just end the poll. Great. So sorry, the first of those two projects that I wanted to mention to you that OCTAE is funding is the Teaching Skills That Matter, an adult education project that Kathy brought up earlier, and Long shared the link for that project in the chat. Currently, they're recruiting for cohort 6. So they've already trained, I think, teachers from 33 different states across the US. So this really is a huge movement that's really exciting. It involves 5 days of training, 3 are in person and 2 are virtual. We're working with teachers from adult basic skills education classes. And so that means ABE, ASE, ESL, IELCE. We've already worked with 150 teachers. We are training on the 9 central skills that matter across 5 topic areas with focus on 3 approaches at work. The participants are supported by coaches who work really carefully and closely with them. We have on-site and virtual coaching available. Participants attend 3 webinars, and there's also a community of practice to support them. I do want to note that only state directors are able to apply. So if you are not at the state and you're on today's webinar but are interested in learning more, please reach out to your state office and ask them, state director or their designee. The application deadline is December 7th. So we encourage you to consider participating in our cohort 6. Another exciting project that I wanted to mention to you is Standards in Action 2.0. Kathy also mentioned this one, and it's a virtual training. You're encouraged to register for the Standards in Action 2.0 virtual training. It's focused on cultivating a language and content focus for English learners. It will be offered 3 times in 2023. So no worries if one of these dates doesn't work out for you. It will be offered in January 10th, March 7th, and May 2nd. So the training is made up of 6 days of concrete activities over a 3-week period that can be immediately applied in the classroom. So it's intensive, but it has immediate results, which is always fantastic. It addresses two critical instructional needs simultaneously: English learners' language and academic content development. So it's really a wonderful training to participate in. It applies to both ESL and ABE teachers and learners, because we all have English learners in our classroom, even if we're not teaching ESL. And just a really quick overview of the SIA 2.0 training. Week 1 looks at participants have an opportunity to experience a higher level literacy model lesson to engage English learners deeply in their content and language development. Then in week 2 is application. You apply the week 1 lessons to a lower level literacy model lesson, which is new from the pilot. I participated in the pilot, and so I'm really excited to see this new addition. You apply the learnings to critique and improve an English language lesson of your own choosing. And then in week 3, experience a model mathematics lesson designed to engage ELs in discussion and reasoning about math tasks. So there's a lot there. The link is in the chat if you would like to apply to participate in that. Again, it's state teams, so please reach out to your state office if needed. With that, I wanted to mention again our training opportunities that we have available through links on this topic that we talked about today and others. If you're interested in receiving technical assistance, we provide it to both cohorts of states and individual states, working with them one-on-one. And a way to access and request that is in the chat. Before we wrap up, I wanted to share with you a little bit about next month's exciting webinar. We know that trauma-informed instruction is currently a really big topic in our field, but we also need to take into account what our staff's needs are so that they are able to provide that trauma-informed instruction and really support their students and have space for our staff to consider what their personal needs are. So next month's webinar is considerations for agency climate and compassion fatigue among staff. I want to note the date for that is December 7th, 2022, which is different from our usual last Wednesday of the month schedule. So please mark your calendars, December 7th. That will be from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern or noon to 1:30 p.m. Pacific. I hope that you will put that into the chat. Or sorry, I think I'll put that in the chat. In the chat, we have the registration link. I hope that you will join us. If you have any specific questions about this topic that you'd like us to address in your next webinar, we ask you to please put those into the chat. We want to make sure that we're meeting your needs about this specific topic. So I'm going to pause to allow you to put any of those questions in there. Okay, again, considerations for agency climate and compassion fatigue among staff. That sort of has to do with working with students. It can be very draining, right? When you're dealing with, you're helping and supporting your students who are going through a challenging situation. So I know that I can't wait for this webinar. Our subject matter expert is absolutely fantastic. So again, I encourage you to register, along with sharing in the chat some additional resources, not related to next month's webinar, related to today's topic that we wanted to share with you. And with that, I want to thank all of you for attending today's webinar, taking time out of your day to be with us to talk about this important topic. And we hope that you will join us on December 7th for our next webinar. Thanks, everyone. Oh, and before we go, I'm so sorry, Kathy and Kathleen. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today, sharing all of your experiences and your wonderful ideas. I know I learned so much, as always, from chatting with you and learning about this topic. So thank you both. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. And again, I invite you, if you're not a member, to join the Links communities.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, Kathleen. Thank you, Marcella. A lot of great information shared. Appreciate it.